Welcome back to the final episode of America Decides. A federal judge has temporarily halted the Trump administration's attempt to block Harvard from enrolling international students. The university filed a lawsuit this morning in federal court, as it had to, accusing the Trump administration of violating, among other things, the First Amendment. I want to bring in our political reporter panel, Sabrina Rodríguez, national political reporter, The Washington Post, Tyler Kendall, Washington correspondent for Bloomberg. Both are dying to talk about tariffs and all sorts of other things, but let's talk about Harvard first. Sabrina, I want to play you sound and the audience sound from the president in the Oval Office this afternoon about Harvard. Let's listen.
Billions of dollars has been paid to Harvard. How ridiculous is that? Billions. And they have $52 billion as an endowment. They have $52 billion. And this country is paying billions and billions of dollars and then gives student loans and they have to pay back the loans. So Harvard's going to have to change its ways.
The reason I'm playing that sound is because I know the lawyers working for Harvard are jotting every one of those words down, saying to the federal court, and I'm sure in a filing that is being written this afternoon, the president is singling out a university irrespective of applicable federal law. He's just calling us out. He wants Harvard to change its ways, specifically, no other grievance, but these things about money and federal support in the past.
Yes, and this is not the first action that Trump has taken against Harvard. We've already seen a month ago, Trump was talking about how he wants the IRS to take away Harvard's tax-exempt status. We've seen him, want to freeze billions of dollars in federal funds. So this is just the latest escalation, and we're seeing it really squarely on Harvard. He's attacked a lot of different universities, but we've seen it squarely on Harvard because Harvard is forcefully fighting back. And we've seen now multiple lawsuits, come back, responding to the Trump administration. So that's the kind of fight that Trump likes to have.
And Tyler, I'm going to give you a full, wide open lane on tariffs, but just very quickly, part of the context here is international students pay the highest tuition rate. And private universities, public universities, love to attract international students for that very reason.
Right, and this really could have a chilling effect. Now, of course, the ban's in place, but we should say it's temporary. There's going to be another court hearing on a longer-term injunction on May 29th, but about 27% of Harvard's student body is made up of international students. We've actually already started to see a shift in some of the government statistics. Major, if you look at those that came into the United States in April, on a student visa, that is down 11% from the year before. So it sort of plays into this broader idea, this broader trend. And as Sabrina was mentioning, when it particularly comes to Harvard, there's already been this slew of other actions that we've been watching, freezing the funds, the tax-exempt status. In fact, we had on Bloomberg television today, the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent saying that President Trump does intend to move forward with withholding that tax-exempt status from Harvard University, saying that they don't qualify for that federal tax benefit.
Also worth noting today, Hong Kong announced that it would be open to students from Harvard feeling distressed by this. And part of the argumentation against policies like this is possible brain drain in the United States, the best and the brightest not coming here, going to places like sympathetic Hong Kong, China, etc.
Yeah. No, this hugely benefits other countries. I mean, the reality is, it's interesting because often when you hear Trump talk about immigrants, he has talked about, the best and the brightest. And, oh, yes, the United States should be accepting those who are going to help, advance technology in this country. Well, those are the kinds of students that are attending Harvard University. Right. So by blocking them, and whether it goes through the court system and ultimately students are still able to apply to come to Harvard, a lot of students right now that are abroad and are looking at what's happening in the United States are going to think twice when they see the State Department revoking visas, when they see Trump attacking these major universities. So even if they're allowed to in the future, I think a lot of international students are going to be thinking twice.
Tyler, tariffs, run with it.
Okay, well, today we saw President Trump really take a big escalation when it came particularly to the European Union.
A new escalation,
A new escalation, saying potentially we could see 50% tariffs. That seemed to sort of set the tone ahead of some pretty highly anticipated trade talks today between the European Union's chief trade negotiator and USTR Jamieson Greer. Now, we haven't gotten a readout of what that conversation looked like, but we're going to be watching it closely since President Trump has said that no progress has been made when it comes to talking with the European Union. And we have to keep in mind, there's a lot of different complicating factors here. One, the EU is negotiating as a bloc. That means all 27 member states ultimately have to agree. And that really complicates the second factor here, which is that when it comes to the European Union, the Trump administration is really demanding that they address what they like to call those non-tariff barriers. So think regulations, lacks IP protections, but in the case of the EU, it's really the VAT value-added tax and also digital services taxes that can hit U.S. tech companies particularly hard. So those are some of the themes that we're watching to see whether or not there could be some sort of concession there, but the EU's really said that those taxes are pretty much off the table. I'll quickly add that our reporting at Bloomberg does tell us that earlier this week, the EU did float an updated proposal. It could have seen trade barriers coming back down to zero on certain products like agricultural goods and industrial goods. But at the end of the day, that wasn't really enough to move the needle.
Sabrina, your take.
I think the hardest thing right now is for a lot of the countries that are really trying to negotiate with the United States in good faith, it's hard to know what exactly it is that Trump wants and what exactly it is, because they'll have conversations with administration officials who say one thing, and then you hear Trump in a press conference say something completely different. But the reality is, he put that 90-day pause on the sweeping tariffs. We're approaching that. We're halfway there. It's early July that we'll see that lift. We have not seen many of these trade deals that he said were going to come together. And you and I have talked about this before, but I covered trade in the first administration, covered for over a year negotiations between the U.S., Mexico, and Canada. That was one trade deal that took over a year to negotiate. So the idea that they're going to get all these trade deals done in the next roughly 45 days is really tough to envision because of just this moving target like Tyler was talking about.
Sabrina Rodríguez, Tyler Kendall, thanks so very much. Both excellent. Really appreciate it.